There comes a moment in every person's life when they must confront a difficult truth. The more you reveal yourself to the world, the less of yourself you truly own. We live in a time when privacy is treated as a flaw, when silence is mistaken for weakness, and when every experience is pressured to become content. But a life constantly displayed becomes a life slowly diluted. Not everything sacred should be public. Not every emotion deserves an audience. Not every achievement needs applause. The Stoics knew this long before the world became loud. Marcus Aurelius once reflected that a person who performs for the crowd loses themselves in the process. He meant that the more you rely on the eyes of others, the more you forget how to see yourself. And today, we are going to explore 6 quiet habits that weaken your inner strength, and what to do instead. If you want peace, if you want identity, if you want unshakable self-respect, then listen. Because this is the journey home to yourself. You already know the first behavior because you've lived it, the habit of over-explaining yourself. It starts gently. You tell someone why you can't attend something. You justify a boundary. You offer extra words to soften a decision. But then it grows. You explain your feelings, your preferences, your silence, your distance. You explain to avoid judgment. You explain to avoid conflict. You explain to avoid disappointing someone who has no true claim over your life. What begins as communication becomes a kind of self-sacrifice. You hand out pieces of your identity in the form of explanations, hoping they'll buy you acceptance. But the Stoics warned us of this trap. Epictetus taught that your actions belong to you, but other people's interpretations do not. A person who needs to defend their every move has already accepted a life spent running from themselves. So what do you do instead? First, you notice the moment you feel the urge to justify. It often lives in the throat. A tightening, a push backward, a sense that you owe someone something. Then, you remind yourself quietly, clarity is enough. I do not need to justify what is mine to decide. After that, you speak the decision once, firmly, calmly, and let the silence carry its weight. Why does this work? Because your mind relearns that disagreement is not danger, and that judgment is survivable. You teach your nervous system that your identity doesn't require permission. When you stop defending yourself, you start becoming yourself. The second habit is seeking constant validation. Validation is seductive. It feels warm, instant, rewarding. A compliment lands, a notification pops. Someone praises your growth. And for a moment, you feel like you exist. And because the feeling is sweet, you begin chasing it. You post your life not to share it, but to be seen. You speak not to express, but to be approved. You achieve not to grow, but to be celebrated. And slowly, you become dependent on the crowd's applause to recognize your own footsteps. Seneca once warned that the person who chases approval becomes a servant of the crowd. Their identity swings with the reactions of others. Their peace becomes fragile. Their worth becomes negotiable. The Stoics believed that if your happiness can be granted by others, then it can be taken by others. And this makes you weak. The remedy begins with a single question before you speak or post or share. Am I expressing myself, or am I performing for acceptance? If you catch yourself performing, pause and tell yourself, I choose to validate myself first. Then, challenge yourself to experience something meaningful without documenting it. Live a moment for its reality, not its visibility. This rewires your mind to generate internal reward. You stop outsourcing your self-esteem to the external world. Confidence becomes something you build, not something you beg for. The third pattern is one almost everyone knows: staying silent to keep the peace. Real silence is wisdom. Forced silence is self-betrayal. When you swallow your truth to avoid tension, you create tension inside yourself. When you dim your voice to maintain harmony, you create chaos in your spirit. You become peaceful only on the outside while becoming resentful, unheard, and emotionally drained on the inside. Marcus Aurelius believed that avoiding conflict at the expense of your integrity is a subtle form of cowardice. Peace is not maintained by suppressing truth, but by living it. So the next time your body tightens because you are about to silence yourself, notice it and tell yourself, peace that requires me to shrink is not peace. Then speak your truth, calmly, concisely, without apology, not to start an argument, but to stop abandoning yourself. Over time, your mind learns that honesty is not danger. You reclaim your agency. You restore your boundaries. You become someone who respects yourself and therefore, someone others must respect as well. The fourth behavior is accepting blame that isn't yours. You say, "I'm sorry," even when you aren't. You take responsibility for someone else's anger, someone else's reaction, someone else's mistake. You become an emotional sponge, absorbing guilt that does not belong to you. And because you do it so often, the world begins handing you more blame, knowing you'll take it. Epictetus drew a line between what is within your control and what is not. Other people's emotions, other people's failures, other people's storms, these are not yours to carry. So the next time you feel the instinct to apologize for something you did not cause, pause. Tell yourself, "I will own my behavior, not their emotions." Then speak with clarity instead of guilt. Say things like, "I see how you feel, but that was not my decision," or "I'm willing to discuss this, but I'm not responsible for that part." This retrains your nervous system to separate conflict from self-blame. You develop emotional boundaries, and people stop seeing you as someone who can be guilted into submission. Your spine strengthens. Your soul straightens. The fifth behavior is allowing inconsistency from others. Inconsistency is not a flaw, it is a warning. The friend who is loyal only when convenient. The partner who promises change but repeats the same cycle. The person who speaks with warmth and behaves with coldness. These patterns create emotional whiplash. And when you allow them, you teach the world that your boundaries can be bent, your standards can be lowered, your loyalty can be exploited. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to watch what people do, not what they say. Words are intentions, patterns are truth. So you start by observing behavior, not excuses, not promises, behavior. Then tell yourself, "I choose stability over potential." After that, reduce your availability to people whose inconsistency drains your peace. Not out of anger, but out of alignment. Why does this work? Because your brain learns to trust your judgment again. You rebuild inner consistency by removing outer inconsistency. You become grounded, rooted, steady. And then we come to the final behavior, ignoring your intuition. Intuition is not mystical. It is the sum of your experiences, your memory, your subconscious pattern recognition, all whispering to you at once. It is the feeling that something is wrong long before your mind has the evidence. But because we've been conditioned to doubt ourselves, we override that inner voice. We rationalize, we hope instead of evaluate, and eventually, we walk into situations our intuition tried desperately to warn us about. Seneca believed that the mind always gives a first impression, and that the wise person listens before drowning it in wishful thinking. Your intuition is information. Not noise, not paranoia, information. So when that subtle discomfort arises, that tightening in the stomach, that hesitating breath, that quiet internal whisper, pay attention. Tell yourself, "My intuition exists to protect me." Then investigate the feeling. Ask, "What does this remind me of? What have I seen in the past that looks like this?" This aligns your decisions with your accumulated wisdom. You reduce uncertainty, doubt, and anxiety. You begin trusting the internal compass that life has been shaping within you since the day you were born. And now, after exploring these 6 behaviors, over-explaining yourself, seeking validation, staying silent to keep peace, taking blame that isn't yours, allowing inconsistency and ignoring intuition, you arrive at a deeper truth. Strength begins the moment you stop performing for the world and start honoring yourself. The Stoic path is not about being emotionless. It is about being anchored. It is about building a life so rooted in self-awareness that outside forces no longer knock you off center. It is about choosing privacy where it protects you, choosing silence where it strengthens you, and choosing authenticity where it frees you. As Seneca once wrote, in essence, living for yourself is one of the rarest achievements, and it is the work of a lifetime. So let this be your moment of return, your moment of reclaiming your voice, your time, your mind, your boundaries. The world does not need to see every corner of your life. The world does not deserve every part of your soul. Some things are meant to be sacred. Some moments are meant to be yours alone, and some truths grow only in silence. If this message speaks to you, anchor it inside yourself. Speak it, write it, declare it. And if you feel called to share your intention with others walking this same path, comment this affirmation: I choose silence when it strengthens me. And we will continue together on the journey toward calm, clarity, and unshakable inner strength. Let's go deeper. Because beneath all these patterns, the over-explaining, the searching for validation, the swallowing of your voice, the carrying of blame, the allowing of inconsistency, the ignoring of intuition, there is something even more powerful to understand. You have been trained to abandon yourself, not by one moment, one person, or one mistake, but by a lifetime of small repeated lessons. You learned to over-explain because someone made you believe your no wasn't enough. You learned to seek validation because somewhere along the way, praise became proof. You learned to stay silent because conflict once felt dangerous. You learned to take blame because peace felt more important than truth. You learned to accept inconsistency because the promise of being loved outweighed the reality of being mistreated. And you learned to ignore your intuition because you were told your inner voice was wrong, dramatic, or inconvenient. These habits weren't formed in adulthood. They were built long before you understood what strength actually was. But here's the turning point, the Stoic revelation that can reshape your entire life. Every harmful habit is just an outdated survival strategy, and every outdated strategy can be unlearned. The Stoics believed human beings suffer not from events themselves, but from the stories they tell about those events. So imagine, for a moment, changing the story. Imagine that silence doesn't mean safety anymore. It means self-erasure. Imagine that validation isn't confidence, it's dependency. Imagine that over-explaining isn't clarity, it's self-doubt speaking through you. Imagine that inconsistency is not a puzzle to solve, it's a warning to honor. Imagine that intuition is not a threat, it's your oldest, wisest ally. When you change the story, you change the behavior. When you change the behavior, you change the identity. When you change the identity, you change the entire direction of your life. The transformation begins in moments so small, they look insignificant. Moments like the instant you resist the urge to justify something that needs no justification. Moments like choosing not to open your phone to share something meant only for you. Moments like pausing long enough to let your intuition finish speaking before you silence it with logic. Moments like noticing the people who only show up when it benefits them, and choosing not to make excuses for the absence they disguise as love. These moments are seeds, and the Stoics taught that even the smallest act done in alignment with virtue reshapes the character. But to truly change, you must understand this: no one becomes strong accidentally. Strength is a deliberate practice, a discipline, a daily choice. Strength is saying less when the world pressures you to say more. Strength is holding your center when the world tugs at your edges. Strength is refusing to dance for approval, even when applause feels tempting. Strength is staying true to your standards, even when inconsistency disguises itself as potential. Strength is trusting yourself so deeply that outside noise cannot drown your inner voice. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, if you are anchored in your own integrity, nothing can disturb you. This was not arrogance, it was freedom, and you deserve that freedom too. But freedom comes with a cost: the willingness to disappoint others, so you can stop disappointing yourself. Think about that. How many times have you sacrificed your peace to maintain an image? How often have you kept people in your life because you preferred their inconsistency over your loneliness? How often have you silenced your needs because someone taught you they were too much? How many times have you apologized just to avoid being abandoned? How often have you tried to prove your worth to people who couldn't see it? And how much longer will you continue? There is a moment, a quiet, private moment, when a person decides they are done abandoning themselves. Not out of anger, not out of rebellion, but out of awakening. It happens when you realize that your life is yours. Your peace is yours, your voice is yours, your needs are yours, your intuition is yours, your boundaries are yours, and you no longer require the world's permission to honor any of them. This is the shift that creates an entirely different human being, someone who no longer performs, someone who no longer begs, someone who no longer shrinks, someone who no longer apologizes for existing, someone who no longer breaks themselves to keep others comfortable. The Stoics believed that a person becomes powerful the moment they need nothing external to validate their internal world. That's where we're heading, because the moment you reclaim your privacy, you reclaim your power. The moment you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your place in the world. The moment you reclaim your intuition, you reclaim your direction. The moment you reclaim your boundaries, you reclaim your dignity. And the moment you reclaim your worth, you become untouchable. You become someone who doesn't need to post every moment, because you are finally living it. Someone who doesn't need to prove themselves, because you already know who you are. Someone who doesn't need the world's applause, because your own approval is enough. Someone who doesn't fear silence, because silence becomes your sanctuary, not your punishment. Strength isn't loud. Strength isn't dramatic. Strength isn't flashy. Strength is quiet. Strength is consistent. Strength is self-owned. And now, with everything you've heard, with everything you're realizing, it's time for the question that decides who you become next. Will you continue performing for a world that does not know your soul, or will you begin living for yourself? Take a breath. Feel your spine straighten. Feel your center return. Feel the weight you've been carrying begin to loosen. You do not owe the world your explanations. You do not owe anyone your constant visibility. You do not owe anyone access to the deepest parts of you. Your life is not a show. Your peace is not a product. Your growth is not a spectacle. Your heart is not a public forum. You are allowed to be private. You are allowed to be silent. You are allowed to evolve quietly. You are allowed to choose yourself without broadcasting it. This is what inner strength looks like. This is what Stoic living feels like. This is the life you are stepping into. The life where your alignment matters more than your audience. And so, as you take this with you, let one affirmation root itself deeply in your spirit. I choose silence when it strengthens me. Say it, claim it, live it. Your journey toward calm, clarity, and unshakable inner strength is only beginning. And in the quiet, you will find yourself again, stronger than ever, untouched by noise, anchored in truth, and finally free.